So in order to see the screen, you have to swipe all the way to the right so that Tom's the only one on. That's how it is on my phone anyway.
Okay. Are we now looking at a slide? Everybody, is the share working okay?
Yes, a workshop slide.
Okay.
Ready to go.
So, my name is Tom Zulist, if some people don't know me, and I'm co-owner of Singer Farm Naturals with Vivian Zulist, and we decided to grow hemp 2 years ago. And in doing that, it led me down a journey of understanding how this plant works with the human body and how it interacts with us. I like to know how things work, and there's a term which is called the epigenetics of how things in our environment, including our foods, how they affect the expression of our DNA to express health, or in the case of negative environmental factors, create the opposite, create disease. So garlic was something that early on I always had a passion towards, and I grew garlic. Chris, do you see somebody in the waiting room? Let me just, are you there,
No,
Chris?
I don't see anyone in the waiting room.
Okay. Trying to, trying to get my mouse to work here. Everything's kind of frozen on me. And just figure out what I'll do here. All right. Looks like I'm able to do something now.
Come here. You've got hair in your mouth. Come here.
I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, there's two people that are actually, I'm trying to get them to come in. I think I just got, for some reason, I've lost control of the, well, it looks like we have control of the program here, so I'll at least be able to do that. Yeah, there's two people. You don't have control of them, Chris? Being the co-host?
I keep checking and I can't see that anyone's waiting in the room.
Okay, because I see, all right. Well, if not, this will be recorded so we can always show it to them at that time. So CBD, what I was saying, just to get back, epigenetics mean like garlic is the second most epigenetically connected food to the human genome. So what does that mean? When we eat garlic, garlic through its components and the way that it's ingested and goes through our bacteria and interacts with the neurochemicals, it turns on the expression of our genes for health. And that's why garlic is considered to be an herb that is up to 50% of all the cures of dis-ease that humans experience. And the reason is it's epigenetically connected, and we've been using it since the beginning of time. The very interesting thing, if you take a look at the cannabis plant, it is the most epigenetically connected of all the plants on the planet to the human genome. It's like a key and a lock that it fits into certain neurological patterns that allow us to express ourselves. And we'll learn about that right now.
Cool.
I think.
You have several more people that just joined. So we have.
Okay, that looks like they came in. Okay.
Yeah, I let them in. I figured it out. So sorry about that.
All right, great. There's another one that just came in now.
Okay,
So
I'll stay on it.
very good, thank you. So here we are. The first year, what we decided to do is we decided to grow this plant called hemp. It's really the cannabis plant. When we think of cannabis, people think right away of marijuana because of its publicity and it being out there. But the hemp plant has been around for a long time. It was part of history. Socrates considered it to be a big part of medicine, and rightfully so. So what we did was we grew our crop. We have our watchdog there to keep track of it, and a teepee set up. So I actually enjoyed sleeping out there in the fall and kind of being around. Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Is that better? Sorry about that. Yeah, so we started growing the crop, and there we go. So the first step in getting from hemp to the process of making medicine, first thing you have to do is you have to cultivate it, organically grown hemp that's been dried, cured properly without pesticides. The next step is extracting. And in order to extract, you can do one of a couple processes: CO2 extraction, where you have a machine that you're taking liquid CO2 and it dissolves the solvents, dissolves the actual cannabinoids, and they filter down. And then when you warm that CO2, it goes from liquid to a gas, and you're left with this crude or this thick medicine or constituents that are oil-based that just came off of these flowers. The next thing is, you look to make sure that you have the proper quality by getting lab reports. And then what you're doing is you're putting it in a form that can be used to introduce it into the human body so that it can do its thing within us. So cannabinoids, there are so many of them out there. We hear about CBD, but there are over, I think it's 112 different cannabinoids that are out there right now. They're still counting. And we hear about CBD. CBG is a very interesting one because CBG was never talked about and really hadn't been researched too much, because when a plant is growing, and what you have is you have this cannabis plant that is either been bred so that it has a lot of THC, or it has no THC and a lot of CBD, or even a balance of the two. It depends on the genetics, and it's all breeding and being able to crossbreed. And when you have a plant that has CBD in it, you tend to get all of these different cannabinoids, and THC is one of the cannabinoids, but they're all in different values. They're balanced. So you can't have high CBD if you have high THC. THC and CBD have to be in a balanced form within that plant. The same thing with some of these other ones. CBG is really interesting because CBG is so unique. It's called the stem cell of all the cannabinoids, because before, when a plant starts growing and it starts from a seed and it starts to produce, and all of a sudden it's starting to put up these flowers, it's going to produce CBG, which will then be turned into THC or CBD. And if you, the way they used to get it was that they would harvest the flowers when they were only like 3 weeks out of 8 weeks in a flowering cycle. So immature flowers didn't have a ton of it, but they were able to get some. They were able to find a recessive trait. They were able to breed it. So now we grew some flowers that had very high percentages of CBG, and CBG is very new to the market. Here's some of the things. It's an antioxidant, which means that it goes after the free radicals in your body. It's antibacterial, anti-erythematic, anti-inflammatory. It's a bone stimulant, digestive aid, lowers blood pressure, painkiller. So it has some specific functions in the human body that it's giving a boost to, that it's stimulating, it's producing the chemicals that are needed. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But as you can see, and this list is extremely new, because we've really only had, since the Farm Bill of 3 years ago, we really didn't have it where it was legal to be able to grow and to be able to get these studies starting to be conducted. You know, when I was in Rochester at one of these seminars, University of Rochester said they can't do any of the research, because if they did, it's still considered a controlled substance by the US government. So therefore, all of their funding would be taken away, and they couldn't afford to have their research funding taken away. So there hasn't been a ton of research done on this stuff, but it's starting to come. And as it comes, and the best thing that happens is that people start to feel the difference and start to understand what works for them and what each of our bodies need, because we're all different. Okay, so here's a list, and there's 113 different cannabinoids isolated from the cannabis plant, exhibiting all different effects. So as you can see, it's not just CBD, it's all of these other ones. It's that whole plant medicine. And that is why it's important. You hear terms in the marketplace of people saying, well, I can't have any THC, so I buy something that has 0 THC. Well, that's called an isolate. What an isolate is that they'll take the component that you're looking for, like CBD, and they're getting rid of everything else and just keeping that one. And one thing that I learned from, again, one of these workshops where one of the researchers was saying is that the entourage effect of the whole plant working as itself, as it is, as nature built it, and different breeds of the plant, different varieties will give the body different effects, but all of them will affect the body in a very natural way, especially the entourage effect of all of the cannabinoids that are meant to be there coming in the plant form, as opposed to going to the isolation stage. So lots of different ones. And again, this field is very, very new. You know, it's been banned in this country for so many years. And now all of a sudden people are realizing, you know, this is some of the most powerful medicine, especially, you know, today with a lot of the mental issues going on. You know, our mental state of mind is really predicated upon, you know, balance of neurochemicals, neurotransmitters in the brain. And that changes our perception from either being in fight or flight or feeling safe and at ease. And these cannabinoids are extremely responsible for how we feel. So if we have the right cannabinoids in our body, we can feel safe and okay, as opposed to feeling like we're in fear and we're in flight and we've got to do whatever it takes to survive. So here's some of the things. Now, you'll notice that it says CBD and then CBDA and THC and THCA. What that is that when the plant is growing and it forms the original compound, it's in an acidic form, the plant form, and that's THCA or CBDA. When time and heat affect that chemical compound, the acid is not stable, and the acid converts to the stable compound
of this,
which is THC or CBD, without the acidic component being attached to it. So that's why if people ingest marijuana that has THCA in it, because it's not been heated, and you eat that flower, you're going to get anti-inflammatory effects, you're going to get anti-cancer effects, but you're not going to get high. And the reason you're not going to get high is that there is no THC in there. There's THCA, which won't get you high. But if you roll that up in a paper, you put it in a pipe and you heat it and you get it above a certain temperature, the acid turns to the psychoactive, psychotropic, and now all of a sudden it affects you differently. A little story was, you know, this couple that you know are very pioneering in the cannabinoids. They were talking about how they had THCA because of its anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer. They were fighting cancer, and they didn't want the THC, and they kept it on the bedstand. And after a couple of days, they says, wow, you know, I'm starting to feel a little different. This isn't right. And they started to think it through. Throughout the day, the sunshine would come in through the window and was hitting that little vial, and it was amplifying the heat in there, and it was heating it up enough that it was starting to convert the THCA into THC, and they were getting the psychoactive effect of it. So, and by the way, it's really interesting because the non-psychoactive part, the CBD, when that comes into the body, because hits different receptors, it actually mitigates or diminishes the peak of the high that a psychoactive THC provides to the human brain, and it extends the time, and it makes it less. So in other words, there's people, you may have heard people say, oh, I get paranoid, or you know, I feel, well, that's because what you're doing is you're hitting one type of your receptors on your body, but you're not hitting the other receptors that are responsible for the balance and creating that safety and that okayness. And that's the way the human body works. So this is a great way to understand how this plant interacts with the body versus us just going on every day without it. The picture on the center is what they call a nerve axiom where activity takes place, where things are now happening within the human body. Okay, so this is where the neurochemicals are formed. If you take a look at those two little hooks that they have the arrow, and they call them cannabinoid receptors, okay? There's one on the left and there's one on the right. The one on the right is showing that it's being fed these same cannabinoids from the human body, because the human body uses this system as its signaling system as to how to produce the chemicals. So the human body actually produces all of the cannabinoids that we read about that you can buy in the tincture form. Our human bodies are doing it. On the left side are what they call the phytocannabinoids, and they're the ones that the plant makes that have the exact same fit to the receptors that the human body can make itself. However, if we are not producing as many as we would like to, or that maybe we're capable of producing for some reason, like environmental stress, and we start to hit those receptors with the plant cannabinoids, we're producing the neurotransmitters. And neurotransmitters are the communication link for the whole human body to operate properly and to come to a state of what's called homeostasis, symbiosis, balance, where everything is working the way it should. So if blood pressure is too high, that's not homeostasis. So what happens is the human body starts to say, uh-oh, something is out of whack, and we need to produce some neurochemicals, some neurotransmitters, so that we can now excite this system, which regulates the pressure, and so on and so forth. The same thing with mood. And that's why it works with mood as well. This is a distribution of the CB1 receptors in the brain. And look at what each of these areas are responsible for. Decision-making, short-term memory, emotional behavior, body temperature, appetite. You know, all of these different systems in the body are all trying to balance themselves and trying to keep themselves in homeostasis. And that's what the human body's trying to do all the time. Well, there's receptors throughout the whole brain that when we consume a cannabinoid that has a CB1 affinity and hits our CB1 receptors, it's stimulating those areas of the brain. So a CB1, when somebody smokes with THC, what's it doing? It's affecting their short-term memory, their decision-making, their emotional behavior, because it's creating the neurochemicals that affect that part of the brain. And it's trying to bring them back into balance. So that's why the cannabinoids tend to have a very strong effect on addiction and also things like post-traumatic stress. Because when we have stress, let's say something happens. Let's say, let's make it simple. I was in a car accident. It's something that I think about. And as I think about it, it worries me. And I thought about it and I thought about it. Well, somebody could say, well, just stop thinking about it. It's not that easy. If the body is looking at it differently, in other words, the health system is looking at the brain and saying, wow, there's this loop firing between this and this neuron that just keeps going on and on and on. Doesn't matter what it's about. Doesn't matter if it dealt with abuse, if it dealt with an accident, if it dealt with fear of the future, whatever it is that is firing over and over again, that circuit is not normal. Release some chemicals, some neurochemicals like serotonin and dopamine to relieve that stress of that circuit firing over and over again, because that's causing a fear, which is causing the need for fight or flight. And there's really no need for it because the body's not in danger. And what happens is we now have something to help us bring back into balance. So how does CBD affect the brain? It works by entering your systems, and then those helps regulate all of those systems, such as the appetite, even the pain sensations and the inflammation. We usually have pain because of inflammation. If I've got a joint and the joint is meant to work really nice, and all of a sudden I've got inflammation in there because I had some pain, and the pain caused inflammation, and that caused more pain, and we had a cycle going on, then what happens is the CBD comes in there, and the CBD is hitting all of the anti-inflammatories to try to bring it down to get blood flow. So now you can repair. So now you can fix things. Okay. And this is really interesting. CB1 is related to THC as opposed to CBD. CBD hits more of the CB2 receptors, and all of the components of the medicine hit all of them and target, and small amounts of THC are good. When it becomes legal in the state, you know, having a balanced amount for certain conditions, you know, it's medicine when it's balanced, and it works differently than what, you know, we've seen or read about, where, you know, it was so taboo. When you think about people smoking pot and being demonized, you know, it was really medicine. You know, it should be looked at differently, and it's going to be. So your CB1 receptors I primarily found in the brain, the central nervous system, you know, the neurological system, and then you go to the CB2 receptors, and look at, there's your immune system. There's your skeletal system. By the way, that article that Chris, there's one in the waiting room, that article that came out that I linked to on Facebook was talking that when the COVID virus hit, that there were some early indications that if somebody were to take high dose of CBD, it would mitigate the cytokine storm that is usually the cause of the tissue attack the healthy tissue in the lungs, and that it could potentially save lives. And you know, that made a lot of sense to me, because that's exactly what CBD is meant to do. CBD is meant to take overreactions and overboard teeter-totters and bring them back to balance. And if somebody is going through this huge immune reaction because they have a virus going through their body, and if they're taking CBD, which is now trying to regulate the immune system, because right there, the CB2 receptor immune system goes right in there, and it's trying to regulate it, it's going to tell the immune system, don't go full steam, you know, hold back, hold back, hold back. And it made sense to me. At any rate, I'm not here to make any medical claims. That's all I know, is that I can tell you that scientifically, this plant is very closely connected to the human genome, and it does magic within our neurological systems that allow our well-being in both a physical and a mental state. And that to me is better than making medical claims. So the endocannabinoid system, these are the endo, meaning the ones that our human body produces, okay, they bind with receptors and they have various functions across the body. Each substance reacts on the body's receptors differently, which is why THC affects us so differently than CBD. And when these two come together, when this receptor and this cannabinoid come together and it's a lock and key, it just can't happen with any single one. It has to be almost like a lock and key. And I remember talking in one of the conferences, there was one of the professors, and he said, it's mathematically impossible for this plant to have been in nature evolved without it having something with divine intervention, that it is so closely related with not only the human genome, but there's also an endocannabinoid system in every mammal, and those same endocannabinoids that each of us produce, this plant produces and can supplement or enhance that within our body, which enhances our health system because that's the regulator of all of our health systems. Okay, let me just see how we're doing on time here. Okay. So, hormones of happiness, and I think we need a lot more of this in life. But these are neurotransmitters. These are the chemicals that are in our body, in our brain, that make us feel happy, healthy, safe, and at ease, in a blissful state of mind, yet alert, not just, high like you would get on THC where you're not in reality, but just a comfortable state of mind that the human body and the human mind is supposed to be in. And all of these are neurotransmitters. Matter of fact, serotonin is what pharmaceuticals called Prozac, and I think they have 4 or 5. It's like a huge number. I know it's well north of 25% of our population is using Prozac as a mood enhancer. Well, 90% of that neurotransmitter, serotonin, is produced by gut bacteria. And we'll talk more about that because I'm going to have a gut series that'll start in 2 weeks from tonight. And we'll talk about the microbes within us and how we can understand how they interact with the human body. But to give you an idea, serotonin, once it's produced in the body, the cannabinoids and CBG in particular, what it does is it inhibits the enzyme that causes serotonin to dissipate out of the body. So it keeps it in the mind longer. It also does the same thing with GABA. And then it also, they found in the research that it stimulates a hormone, which is called adenine, which is considered to be the bliss hormone. And it is that feeling that everything is just, it couldn't be better. And that hormone is actually stimulated, the production is stimulated through one of the cannabinoids, and it happens to be the CBG that is very powerful in stimulating that production, as well as keeping serotonin and GABA in the system longer so that we have that feeling of well-being. And this is interesting because when we think about serotonin and dopamine, what dopamine is it's a reward or a pleasure or euphoria, and it turns into a compulsion. And I can give you a real good analogy. Social media. It's a dopamine. They've studied the dopamine pathway of the human brain. So what they do is they give you a reward by getting a like. You get pleasure, euphoria. You fine tune so that you can get more of those. It becomes a compulsion, and you have a loop, and that's how we feel good with dopamine. But you don't necessarily have to have that dopamine from an outside source. You can have it from just stimulating your own receptors, and doing that by using CBD, because CBD will keep it. So in other words, instead of having to get more likes so that you feel good about yourself, you feel good about yourself because you got more dopamine and serotonin flowing in your body, and you're starting to realize that you feel safe and everything is okay. And there is a lot to be grateful for. But you couldn't think about that before because you didn't have enough of these neural chemicals, these neurotransmitters, either being produced or staying in the system long enough in order for you to be able to have that state of mind. It actually can be a choice, and you can actually, when it comes to serotonin, I kind of joke around. I eat for happiness now. I eat certain foods to promote certain colonies because they're going to produce serotonin. They're going to make me happier. But that's just the way I look at things now. So these are all the neurotransmitters. And these are the ones that make every day exciting. The fight or flight that we all go through, whether it be driving in traffic, having a discussion with somebody that gets heated, or, GABA, which calms it all down and, kind of makes it all back to focus. And all of these are regulated and stimulated and balanced with our receptors, our cannabinoid receptors, because what we're doing is instead of producing them, we're bringing them in, we're hitting them, we're exciting, we're now getting everything to flow so that all of a sudden we can get that thing that I was thinking about over and over again to finally stop. And all of a sudden I can be in the present moment and realize that at this moment, everything is good. What else really matters? But I can't do that if I didn't have a heck of a lot of GABA or serotonin flowing in my brain, because I wouldn't have anything to counter the adrenaline with the fight or the flight, or, or some of the other things that happen on a daily basis.
Tom?
Yeah.
You have a few questions. Do you want to take all of the questions at the end?
No, let's take some right now.
Okay, let me just go back to the questions. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go. The first question was, how do you know the right ones to take? So I think she was talking about, this is from Roseanne. I think she was saying, how do you know the right CBD to take? You were talking about different CBD, CBG.
Yeah, so it's kind of experimentation. Like what I'm learning is that when we decided to make CBD, everybody just sells CBD oil. And I had a bottle here from Empire Hemp who processes for us. It's called CBD oil, and that's it. Ours is different because ours has a specific name on it, and I think you might be able to see it there. That says, this one is Sour Space Candies, okay? So we decided to do that because to me, it didn't make sense that each plant has its own genetics and its own components that nature put together. And for me to combine them all, I'd rather try to keep them separate and then see if people feel different because of them, because they all have different terpenes, which are these scents or these odors and sticky substances that the plant produces, and they have amazing effects on the human body. And what we find is that we're getting feedbacks to understand. So like we're finding that people that have trouble with sleep, that Hawaiian haze helps the sleep cycle. It has tropinolene, which is one of the terpenes, and it tends to calm the central nervous system. And people that couldn't sleep find that they can sleep very easily with that. They're still getting the CBD because it's just another characteristic of that variety, but the CBD is still hitting all the other receptors, and the chemical formulas are posted, and you'll start to see, and we'll look at one that there's these other components, and you try some and you see how they affect your body, because everybody is different. We're all genetically different to begin with, and then we've all been predisposed to different environmental factors that are either affecting us in a negative or in a positive way. And with all those things, when we start to hit these receptors and start to get our system going, we're all at different places. So, the main thing is just to start to feel yourself, understand your body. You'll start to feel it. Like, I know that if I need to take CBD, because I'm going to be in a high stress situation, like before this. Okay, I wanted to be nice and calm, so I took 80 milligrams of CBD because I knew 80 milligrams would be a dose that will help me stay focused. It won't be too much that it would maybe cause me to be lethargic. It's just what I learned works for me. But, you know, and we'll talk a little bit more about dosing in a little bit near the end. But I wish I had a better answer for you. And the real answer is that experiment, understand that different ones will affect you differently. So be bold. I mean, that's what life's about. There haven't been, I mean, the only thing, the caution that I have read that I think is important to state is that because CBD is metabolized through the liver is also used for a lot of other medications. So if people are on a lot of medications and you start taking CBD, it could change the metabolism rates of some of those other drugs. And that becomes an issue that you want to make sure that you're monitoring, or your doctor is aware, or you're very aware of what you're doing. You know, I'm in a fortunate position. I don't take any medications, and a lot of the people that I do know that are taking some medications, what they've actually found is that they've been able to get away from that because their body is doing it on its own. You know, it started to do it on its own with even products like garlic will do as good with blood pressure as blood pressure medication. So if you do garlic and you do CBD, you know, you don't need the medication, and you can do them both, and they both regulate it. So it really depends. And it's so hard because our society has been so bogged down with treating symptoms with these pharmaceuticals. You know, the pharmaceuticals want to take each one of the different cannabinoids and separate them and then figure out how they can affect the body and then market them and sell them as one individual thing for one purpose. You know, it's just insane. You know, this is plant medicine, and it should be cheap and reasonable for people to get. And it was meant here for a reason. So I hope that helps. Next question.
And I think, so along the same lines, I'm just gonna give you both of these questions together because I think that they kind of go together. I know you said that there's a sweet spot for everyone. How do you find it, and is it a long process? And then also, is it possible to use a certain potency and then have to amp it up because you've become used to that particular level?
Okay. So when it comes to resistance, a doctor at one of the centers that deal with medical marijuana said to the patients, they tell them that if you find that the cannabinoids don't work as well, what you do is you just take 48 hours, 72 hours off, and then you go back, because that's what it takes in order for them to maybe reset themselves. So, and then the cannabinoid resistance will lower itself. So it's a simple process. As far as dosage, it's hard because everybody is different. You know, some people say start out with just one drop under the tongue. I haven't seen that work for a lot of people, but maybe it does if somebody is extremely sensitive. I find that, you know, where people are really getting some relief is when they're doing doses of like 30. If you have 1,000 milligram bottle, we might as well talk about that now. So when you get a bottle and it says 1,000 milligrams, that's a total of the whole bottle. If you drank the whole bottle, you'd have 1,000 milligram dose in one shot. There's 30 dropperfuls. So 1,000 divided by 30 is 33 milligrams in one dropperful. When I was reading, and there's a website called projectcbd.org, and it's great. And they have lots of great articles out there with people pioneering this industry. The therapeutic dose for an adolescent treating for an illness would be 1 milligram for every 2 pounds of body weight. So if I'm 180 pounds, that would mean that I could do 90 milligrams if I was an adolescent for a therapeutic dose. I could easily see myself taking for a therapeutic dose as an adult, and I'm not recommending anybody do this, but I take 2.25, 250 milligrams, 300 milligrams. There's not been an overdose recorded. Those are not out of the ballpark, but I was treating something very severe at the time. I was going maybe through tons of, with COVID-19 and issues between business or this or that, and you're feeling tons of pressure. I was doing 200, 250 milligrams and everything was okay. Whereas before I did that, there was a lot of stuff that was stressing me out. I wasn't sleeping right, and I upped my dose in order to get through that. Why? Because I needed that extra dose of serotonin. I needed to stop those patterns in the brain of thinking about the unknown and thinking about what if and what if and what if. And none of those what ifs happened anyway. I should have just been in the moment, but I couldn't think about it at the time because I was distracted. So you tend to get used to, and people, I have people that buy the 2400 because now one dropper full is 80 milligrams and they know that that's going to do it. And I have other people that take a half a dropper full of 1,000 milligram, and that's what works for them. And everybody is different. And that's what makes it a little bit harder to understand. But if you understand what it's doing inside of you, and you understand that it's affecting all of these different neurotransmitters, and you're putting it into the body, I really feel that when you understand how something works, you can look for the evidence as to how it's working and what it's doing to you. If you don't know and you're just taking it and you're saying, I don't feel any different. Now at least you have an idea how it can change you so that you can start to look for those signals and say, wow, I am feeling a little bit better mood today, or that knee doesn't really hurt. One thing the human body is conditioned to do is that we recognize pain. You have pain today, you feel it. If you don't have pain today, you don't feel it. And if you don't feel it, you don't think about it. And most of the days are pain-free. So we only think about pain, but we don't feel about it when it's gone. So if we're taking CBD and the knee was hurting us and then all of a sudden it's not hurting, you got to have awareness to know that it's not hurting because it was hurting. And the CBD is probably responsible for relieving the inflammation, helping with the pain, getting blood flow, and getting the repair. And if you put it on topically, it'll do it as well. Any other questions there, Chris?
No, we're good for now.
Okay, so homeostasis, and this is a state where the body wants to be in, where everything is balanced. The blood pressure, the sugar levels, everything. And all of that has to do with all of our chemicals, our neurotransmitters operating in a homeostasis basis to balance everything out so that we don't get too hot, so we don't get out of balance, we don't have issues with, even mental balance. This is really interesting because a lot of people associate having cannabinoids to causing the munchies or increased appetite, but it's...
I can't see your screen. Are you sharing? Can everyone else see his screen?
Everybody seeing a screen okay?
I see it okay.
Yeah?
Okay, then it's just me. As long as everyone else can see it.
Okay. Yeah, we cut you off, Chris. Sorry.
That's okay.
All right. So what this talks about is weight has a couple things in the human body. It has nothing to do, it has less to do with what we think it has to do. It has an awful lot to do with things that we don't think about. So an example is the microbes inside of our gut that metabolize the food can determine whether or not you're going to have a certain outcome as far as your body weight goes. And also how your metabolism is operating and how all your systems are operating in the body. And CBD, like anything else, is going to want to bring you back to homeostasis and balancing every system in the body, which means it's going to try to balance that blood sugar. Now, mind you, if you start to have more awareness of other things, just taking CBD alone is not going to magically create this different human body, but it's going to assist in all of those processes because the human body wants to go to its homeostasis perfect weight. And when the body goes to that homeostasis perfect weight, that human body can pretty much put anything that they want into there, and it's going to stay at that perfect weight because it's going to be balanced around that number, and it's going to run optimally. And it'll do that. And it'll run at a much more harmonious long-term rate with less issues because it's at its homeostasis. Okay. And this is how to take CBD oil. And there's, some people say, well, there's different ways to take it. You can vape it or smoke it. When you do smoke it or vape it, it's the most potent into your body. 75% is instantly in your bloodstream after you inhale it. When you do it in the oil form, what it does is it gets right into the bloodstream within the next 30 minutes. It's going to get into the bloodstream through the tissue under your tongue. And when you swallow the rest, it'll get metabolized through the liver and it'll get into the bloodstream and start to hit all your receptors as well. Okay, and then I wanted to bring up here. Can everybody see this lab report? Is that showing up right now?
No, I don't see that lab report.
No? Okay. All right. So, all right, I'm going to pull up a lab report, but I'm here for questions now. If anybody has any questions.
Should you take CBD on an empty stomach or a full stomach?
Ah, okay. It really depends on your body. Like I actually like to take mine in the morning, and I like to take mine. I have a formula that I use. I use a tablespoon of coffee and I use a tablespoon of chicory root because chicory is a prebiotic for my microbes. So rather than just having coffee, which is a good antioxidant in its moderate form, I add the chicory to it, and then I like to put CBD oil in there, and then I put it in a blender and it whips right up. And then I'm getting some fat in my body, my body's metabolizing it. So I don't even put it under my tongue that way. I just get it in the body through the liver that way. And I do that, but it really depends on what people do. There's other people who don't like the taste of it. We'll be working on putting it into baked goods, like cookies and treats and getting drinks so that it's easier and that people don't have to, worry about putting the drops under the tongue if they don't like the taste or whatever. We'll make it in different ways that people can take it. But yeah, it's any time of the day, people that like to use a Hawaiian haze for sleep, they tend to take it closer to bedtime. That's what I found. And, I also have heard people I like to use the Electra earlier in the day. It kind of makes me more aware. And I'm getting my CBD as well. It's Electra tends to be more in a sativa. There's 3 different varieties, and the sativa tends to give you more energy, whereas a indica tends to give you more dreamy, sleepy, neurological type effects. Okay, any other questions? And I have, I wanted to give you an idea of this. All right, can everybody see that report?
Tom, I do have a couple of questions. You want to go through the report or you want the questions first?
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly show this report. So
Okay.
This is our latest edition, which is called the CBG that we had a lab report on. And as you can see, when you get these reports, they have different cannabinoids. So there's THC is next to none. Delta 9 THC, there's the cannabinoid. CBDA, CBD. Here's a CBGA, CBD. It's also got some CBC, some CBT. So there's different cannabinoids in different plants. And that's why having one of these versus having another one may affect the body differently or the mind differently. I found with taking CBG that what it does is it tends to make me more focused and having the ability to not get distracted with as many things. And I found that that's the case for another guy that takes it. But again, everybody is different, and it's still early in the stages of bringing this out. I mean, this is only our second year of getting a feel of how people give us feedback. But as time goes on, you know, people will start to be able to explain more about how this medicine works and what it does neurologically with the neurotransmitters and how they affect our human happiness and our human health. Okay, questions, Chris?
Yeah, let me go back there. Okay, so is it possible to use an oil to make pain relief cream, or how do you use it topically? And then which one would you use for the pain relief?
Yeah, so any of the CBDs you can use for the pain relief. You can use the actual oil form itself, or we do have some salves here, the Empire Hemp people that did our processing. They actually make some salves, and we carry some of them here. They're priced very reasonable. Again, like 5 cents a milligram, which is a real fair price for them. So yeah, it's either way. What you're doing is when you're putting it on, let's say the knee, if you're administering it to the knee, as it penetrates right through that skin, it's going to hit their CBD receptors right in the glands, right in the skin. And then it starts to stimulate them to start to get information flow and neurological transmission as to, you know, what's going on in this area. You know, it's like lighting up all of the healing systems within that area. It's giving them a goose. Instead of the human body producing the cannabinoids to come in there and start to do that, we're introducing the cannabinoids, the phytocannabinoids, which fit the same lock and key to instrument all of that healing of the inflammation and the pain and getting all the homeostasis back in that joint. So that's, and how we take it either topically, the same stuff that you're taking topically, you could take internally if it's the tincture form. And if not, if you go with the one that has usually beeswax in there, and maybe some herbs mixed in there, and either way, you're going to get that same effect. And again, these receptors are throughout our skin. They're throughout our whole human body, and you know, and we produce these same cannabinoids. Matter of fact, it was interesting because when THC was considered to be so taboo, you know, one of the scientists was saying, well, they should arrest everybody because we're all manufacturing THC because the body does produce THC in very small amounts. And that's one of the cannabinoids. And that's why the phytocannabinoid hits the same receptor, but the receptor is there because the human body produces it. So it's all part of the bigger system. Anything else, Chris?
We're all caught up.
We are. Okay, and look at that, 3 minutes to go. Perfect timing. Well, thank you, everybody. It's really, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to grow this plant and then be able to bring it to the community and share this knowledge. And, you know, from my vantage point, it's beautiful because I see people who come in here. A couple of the stories, this gentleman came in and he comes up to me, and this was before the pandemic, and he puts his hands like this. And I says, yeah. And he says, this is the first time my hands haven't shook in like 5 years. He goes, I'm going fishing today. And I said, really? He says, yeah. He says, you know, what he did was he got some flowers and he smoked the CBD flowers, and it calmed his central nervous system to the point that he could then have calm hands. And it was just amazing. And, you know, another person came in and said, you know, they're able to talk to people. They're able to have this anxiety that they felt not good enough or not well enough or not safe or sure to themselves, you know, and they're able to talk to people and they're feeling okay. And it's really, you know, to be in that position and be able to grow it and be able to see that is just wonderful. So that's what motivates us. And thank you for all your support and everything. And we're here
One more.
we can.
Tom.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend for anxiety? What would be the best one for anxiety?
For anxiety, I use a blend because I like the higher dose for the anxiety. The CBG, I think, is really worth trying because the CBG has some CBD and some CBG. See how it works on the mind for that anxiety, because it should be able to take it away. And then if you want to try one in the non-CBG area, any one of them, like we have a woman who buys sour space candy, and usually we hear about how it gives a good body high, and she buys it every week because it's great for her anxiety. So, you know, I guess, again, it's so hard because it's like there's so many different apples, and I don't want you to shy away from any of them because they're all going to have a good effect on you. They're all going to get help with that anxiety, because remember that anxiety is an imbalance in the neurological chemicals, the neurotransmitters, in that whole dopamine, serotonin, that feel good, that anandamide. That's why I like the prospect of what CBG can do, because of it producing more anandamide, which is a bliss hormone, and keeping that serotonin and GABA in there. But it's preliminary, you know, because it's so new. It's only like a year that we've been able to produce high volumes, or a year and a half. But I think that one has promise. I'm going to grow quite a bit more this next year. It's also extremely powerful for cancer, which I think that, you know, cancer is something that the human body is always having cancerous cells that come up. And if we have a way to be able to fight them by triggering our own defense system, gosh, that's what we're meant to do. And that's what our body does. But now we can enhance it by getting the phytocannabinoids instead of the endocannabinoids doing all the work. We can supplement it and get all of these systems firing on all cylinders so that we experience what truly we're meant to, which is homeostasis, you know, a beautiful life. And the things that are out there are still going to be out there, but they shouldn't affect our present moment, because we are okay at this moment. Sometimes we don't think we are.
Yeah, I agree. And on a personal note, I will say that, you know, it really is trial and error. And for me, I remember asking, you know, like, which one would be the best for me? And I really had to try the different blends. And I have found that Hawaiian Haze definitely helps with me. You know, I hit menopause and my hot flashes were getting really, really bad. And when you experience that and your sleep is broken, it can be really problematic for the next day. And it's like, what comes first? Is it the stress that's waking me up, or am I waking up and then having the hot flash? But if I take the Hawaiian Haze before bed, I have a great night's sleep. So that has been absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, we found that quite a bit. Matter of fact, we're getting ready to process our second year flowers, and we're going to do 1,000 and a 2,400 milligram of the Hawaiian Haze, because, you know, people are using it for sleep so much, and we're going to give a higher dose if they need that as well.
Yeah, and we have another person, Michelle, who's saying that she tried CBG and it's really helped her knee pain. So, you know, and for pain, I had tooth pain, and I've put sour space directly on my tooth after, you know, having, you know, a crown put on. And I'll tell you, that really helped me more than Tylenol. So really playing with the different blends for me has been key, and just seeing what your body needs and how it receives the CBD and the cannabinoids. It really is very it's really trial and error, just like a bunch of you have been saying on the chat. That's all it is just seeing what your body needs.
Yeah, and getting in touch. Remember, epigenetically, we are connected to this plant, and we've had this strange relationship with it, you know, and now it's coming full circle. And I think at the right time, because we're going through as a human race, you know, a time that we have a lot of challenges and a lot of things that can cause worry and fear. And we now have a lot of the medicine in front of us that can help with that. And it's becoming legal. So, you know, I can grow it and we can consume it and we can enjoy our time on this planet together just a little bit better than what it would have been with all the stress and not being in balance. So if we don't have any other questions, then we'll sign off. And when will we be able to grow our own? God, I just don't understand how, number one, how people shouldn't be allowed to grow hemp now. And eventually they should be able to grow the other one. But it'll, you know, the state wants to get its money, and the state's going to get quite a bit of money out of the system. It's going to drive the street price. You know, the street price on an ounce of pot today is maybe $200, and the state will be charging $300 by the time we're done. So it's going to be expensive, but it's at least going to bring the medicine out. The thing they are talking about doing is that they're going to tax the THC level, which I like that phase of it, because the real medicine is when people learn that if they have a CBD and a THC balance and they're able to have that interact on their human body, it's a different experience than what people experience when it's just all THC and very little CBD. And I've seen a lot of people, a lot of kids in particular, that have been, the THC levels are so high that these kids are having psychotic issues, they're having psychosis, they're having, you know, all kinds of issues with anxiety. And it makes so much sense when you understand the science, because you're hitting all the CB1 receptors, CB1, CB1, CB1. CB2 is sitting here unstimulated, and CB2 is responsible for the serotonin, the dopamine, all of the balance, for the neurological chemicals to balance the brain. And we're not getting any of those, but we're getting the high psychotropic and the feeling of being high. And then we wonder why the kids are having the problem. And if they could just be taught to balance the two, and the kids that have learned that, it's more balanced, and it makes them feel more whole. So
Tom, one more thing, and then I know we're limited on time, but I just want to, like, two quick things that people are asking. Number one is, I think it's a quick and easy answer. If you ate the plant, would that be okay?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that do juicing for all the nutrition from the plant. There's all these different uses. So yeah, people can consume the plant. You can eat it. You know, when you get a pretty ripe flower and it's got a lot of those terpenes in there and you chew on that thing, I've tried it. It's pretty tough, but I've eaten them. Quite the aftertaste. But I've heard of people juicing a lot of the leaves to be able to get a lot of the nutrients from the leaves. But yeah, there's lots. Even the roots have different uses. This plant is just medicinal from tip of the root to the top of the flower, all the way through.
And you can't sell the plant directly, is that correct?
The regulations are still up in the air. The problem that they don't want us to do is sell flowers, because they feel that will promote smoking, and they don't want to promote smoking. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be interesting, because how are you going to legalize marijuana and not let people buy flowers? Because that's what they're going to get. That's the market. So my view is we'll see how it turns out. You know, there's a lot of people fighting the cause, and I'm not one of them. I've got plenty of other battles to run than worrying about that. But it'll all work out.
And lastly, I think everyone has really enjoyed this, as far as I can see from the chat. And everyone had great questions, so thank you. People want to know how they can get the recording and share it with some of their friends, and when will it be available?
Yeah, so what we'll do is I will put the recording on our YouTube station. Okay, so Singer Farm Naturals has a YouTube station, and I'll get it up there. There's 2 gut talks that are up there now, and we'll get this one up there. And then in 2 weeks, we'll start a series on talking about gut health and how that all plays in here. And as you notice, CBD oil is doing one other thing. It's a very powerful antimicrobial. So what else it's doing is that when it's getting into our system and we're ingesting it and we're bringing it into the body in all these different ways, it's getting a balance again to our internal microorganism community within us. So it's balancing all of those issues at the same time. Just brings homeostasis to every part of the human body. That's what it's all about. Okay. Well, thank you. And
yeah, thank you.
okay. Have a great night, everyone.
You as well, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Take care.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you for coming today and taking the time.
Okay.